Okay, we're going to get started with our last session for today, which is a good one. So the Fight Alliance works very closely with EMVCo just to ensure that our specs are in line with each other and they complement each other. We had to leave the door open, by the way, because they were locking, so that's why. So welcome to this session, and I am happy to welcome Arman Aygen, who is the new Director of Technology from EMVCo, to give us the latest on EMV 3DS.
Thank you, Megan. And thanks, Fido, to invite us to share a little bit more on the work that we've been doing together and bringing collaborative value, including also W3C, and bringing more convenience to the consumers in order to enhance the security for the authentication on new digital channels and devices. So what we're going to be talking about today is a brief overview of who EMVCo is, because not everyone may know, and also a little bit about our mission and why we've been working on this fraud prevention specification. EMV 3DS is an EMV specification specifically in order to enable the cardholder authentication in remote commerce and e-commerce use cases. So EMVCo, its mission is to enable card-based payments to work seamlessly and securely worldwide. And quite proud to say that today we've got millions of cards out there, let's say billions of card payments happening and trillions exchanged in transactions. The way we managed to reach this scale is by writing these specifications that gives a commonality on how the different chips are used for payment. And that's for the convenience. Then we support testing, approval, and evaluation to make sure that it's reliable. And then we have an EMVCo Marks program, which allows the consumers to have that confidence in the usage and this familiarity with the different logos that we use. So everyone will recognize the contactless logo on the card, and that's coming from the EMV Marks program. We don't do this in isolation. We have close to 100 different advisors working with us, and they kind of engage very actively in telling us what are the things that we need to work on. They contribute to the specifications and have the final vote also on the publication of these specifications. And we also have an industry engagement that is happening, and that's how we're working with Fido and many others. And we'll have a slide about the different industry engagements that we have. A little bit of history. I've noticed that there's a trend talking about the history. Banks have been experimenting with chips since the 90s, mostly domestically. So it's not really new, the chip cards. However, they quickly run into interoperability issues. And that's where EMVCo worked really hard in defining a common specification that could be used. And why does it matter is we've all been traveling. I think most of us have been traveling. And it's quite convenient to be able to rely on our payment instrument to work reliably wherever we go and consistently. And this is coming from that common specification. And EMVCo has worked also beyond the EMV chip specification to add contactless, mobile acceptance, 3D secure tokenization as secure remote commerce, as well as a QR code specification. These specifications together enable the use cases of the payment in the ecosystem. So whether we work with banks, merchants, and vendors, these technologies work together jointly in order to enable the consumer experience in the e-commerce and face-to-face transactions. A few words about the specifications. It's a common foundation on how these different cards are going to be used. But but we don't provide any business rules. There are no mandates related to it, and the specifications are provided royalty-free. They provide also enough flexibility so that people can implement them in different ways, and that kind of fosters innovation as well as enables the competition. So people can have and find ways of using this to enable the technology to serve their own purpose in their own industry or segment. This is just a little overview of the different specifications that we have, and they are all available royalty-free on our website. So what is a specification? There are two layers that we use in order to create them. One is the standards. So we take some of the ISO or W3C standards as inputs in order to enable some of the functionalities. So they provide us the high-level rules, as well as the requirements that we may have either from the security perspective with PCI or regulation, either national or regional, like the PSD2 directive that influence 3D Secure. And then at the specification level, in order to not work all of us in different silos, creating complexity in integration, we have been working very closely with FIDO and W3C so that all these three technologies can actually merge together. And you as a consumer, you don't know which one you are using, but you basically are doing a one-click and you're making a purchase. And this is enabled through this integration and the really hard work that has been going on between those. And if you had the chance to see the presentation this morning from Doug, you will have more visibility on how they merge together. These are some of the other industry bodies with which we work together or collaborate or discuss. They are global, so we have companies in Asia, in Europe, and in the US, and also different segments. We have the travel agencies, we've got the telecom operators, we've got the Secure Technology Alliance and Nexo, which gives you a broad input in both industry segments as well as regional inputs. So the global interoperability is really part of our mission. And here we go. So here is a brief view of some of the associates that we have. I'm not going to go through them all, but it gives you a little idea of the variety of the different organizations that we work with, whether they're domestic networks, whether they're payment gateways, processors, travel agencies, banks, and whatnot. So this wide area of inputs helps us be more relevant in the marketplace. The way they contribute to the work that we do is they provide inputs in the new specifications or major spec revisions. And then they can call for either business or technical special interest meetings in order to share some of the feedback they may have either from the industry segment or the different region. And then these are used in order to draft either updates or new specifications, provided for updates and feedback. And then in the final spot here, I don't know if the it's the final on the right, is when the specification is ready to be published, we get a vote, and those specifications are made available and published only if we get a majority of people voting in and approving it. Now, the second part of the presentation is why we've been working so hard in this fraud prevention technology. I think I'm not going to repeat a lot of things that have been said today, but we have not only seen an increased variety of mediums or devices used by people in order to buy online. And again, this is not something that is specific to the US, it's something that is global and seen everywhere. And the growing challenge of the fraud that is happening. And I think that presentation we had from the Fed also was showing quite good insights on that. And the Visa presentation this morning was giving quite good insights on the numbers behind it. It's not only the fraud that is the problem, there's also the convenience of the checkout. And the Thales presentation, I think, was giving a good insight on how the UX and the security cannot be looked at individually. So we have to make sure that the approval rates are up and that we reduce the friction as well. And that's the only way that the consumers will continue shopping online. To the specifics on how we're trying to address that fraud. We launched EMVCo several years ago. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what it is and also the latest developments that we have done in that section. 3D Secure is an e-commerce fraud prevention technology that allows the cardholder authentication for online purchases. And the idea is to work and update the specification, and the latest updates that we provided are really targeting not only industry-specific messaging that we can have, but also reducing the friction for the consumer. And the way we are making it available and pervasive around globally is by also maintaining the test platform that makes sure that any 3DS solution that is put out there are working the first time and are working reliably and consistently. This solution is working in collaboration with the issuer, the merchants, and the consumers. And the idea is to be able to detect fraud as early as possible in the purchasing experience. By doing so, we are able to reduce the friction and increase the approval rates. You may have seen also that between a face-to-face transaction and a remote transaction, the approval rates are not the same. But this kind of technologies combined with tokenization help really to improve the approval rates, which means more transactions for the merchant. And for the issuer is reducing the fraud that is happening by giving the information that is necessary for the issuers to do their risk-based analysis. And for the consumer is to have more confidence in making their purchases online and using the cards more conveniently. How does it work? So when you go to make your purchase online, either on your mobile device or on your computer, you click the checkout button, and in a normal flow, you would get a frictionless flow, which means that the transaction gets through automatically. You may get into edge cases where you either have a high-value transaction or a purchase that you don't do on a regular basis, or it could be due to regulation that is requiring a strong customer authentication. And that's when you get the challenge flow, which is asking you either for your biometrics or for a one-time password or any other type of second factor authentication that might be needed. The latest improvements that we provided to the 3DS specification, I'm going to go through at a high level first on some of the functionalities that are provided, and then we're going to go layer by layer into some more details on each one of them. So what we have seen is a wider range of devices that is used by consumers in order to do their purchases. So we had to provide more flexibility in order to work with those devices, whether they're gaming consoles or smart speakers. They have less processing power, less memory, so we had to build a new split SDK model, which gives more flexibility in integrating the 3DS functionalities into those specific environments. The additional functionalities that we added was the integration with the browser. So we have an additional authentication methodology that is provided by the WebAuth SDK, which may call the FIDO authenticator, and that could be passed on to the 3DS network. And we also have the secure payment confirmation, which is another case of having the issuer authenticator being leveraged by the merchant in a completely embedded fashion. So the merchant has the website. It's using the website API in order to call in the issuer authenticator and pass it on to the 3DS network, and giving, again, that frictionless flow. So these are on some of the functionalities that we're adding on that side. Some of the other functionalities is removing friction. We've seen in the Intersect presentation the out-of-band authentication that could be used. This is an additional friction. You have to move from the merchant application into the issuer application. You got the login, approve the transaction. So there are new functionalities that have been added to the specification, allowing the automated split between one to the other, as well as additional data fields available for the merchant to display during the purchasing experience. We're going to see more details about that a little bit later. So this collaborative, I can't emphasize enough how powerful this collaboration between W3C, FIDO, and EMVCo has been, because it's really bringing that convenience to the consumer. You as a consumer, when you go on a merchant site and you want to make a purchase, there are a lot of things that needs to happen in the background, and instead of addressing them one by one, either authenticating yourself with the merchant once, and then going onto the browser and identifying yourself there, and then going into your issuer and authenticating yourself yet a third time over there, is creating a lot of inconvenience for the consumers. And having that integrated approach through the SDKs and the APIs that were made available and working together, rowing on the same boat in the same direction, allows to have that convenience from the consumer perspective, where they do the authentication once, they click on the checkout button once, and everything is taken care of for them in the background. So these different flows and data elements were added on the specification on purpose in order to enable these functionalities and giving more flexibility for the merchants in their checkout pages and processes. A little differentiation as well, secure payment confirmation embeds a lot of information, including the issuer authenticator, which is the FIDO authenticator you may have on your computer. I'm using a Mac. I'm putting my finger on the Touch ID sensor, and this goes directly to the issuer to validate risk-based engine work, and I get a frictionless flow on the output, which is quite nice when it's available, and we get used to it. And when we don't have it, we're just like, oh, I'm going to go back to the merchant that provides it. I see a few people laughing. I think they agree with that. So this is the example, specific example about the out-of-band. So the EMV 3DS 2.3 added this automated out-of-band transition, which will enable reduces the number of clicks you have to do in order to do this out-of-band authentication, basically. These are three different examples of enhancements provided by the user interface improvements. Is adding new fields that can be used in order to communicate to the consumer from messages coming from the issuer directly, but also providing more flexibility in the different fields that you can use for your checkout. So if you need something that you know, that's something that can be added. And if you want to use another type of authenticator, this is also another button that can be added as well. And that flexibility is basically what I've tried to emphasize at the very beginning. EMVCo is making specifications that enables convenient and secure transaction, but it's just a common base and allows enough flexibility in the implementation to differentiate in the market, which is always something that we hear from the merchants. They want to differentiate and they all have a different audience to talk to, so they really need to have this flexibility in their implementation. I heard in the Fed presentation about a call for industry feedback and inputs. And this is one of the examples of how powerful that collaboration is. So we had a special interest meeting with the airline industry that gave us their inputs on what data sets would really help them in order to detect fraudulent transactions as early as possible. These have been added as extended messages. These are available not only in version 2.3, but it's available in all the 3DS 2.x versions, which allows basically a stronger and more confident authentication for anything that's related to the travel agencies. And we had a similar conversation with gaming consoles that provides us very specific data sets coming from the gaming machines that enables a better authentication of the consumers when they do their purchase on the gaming console directly. On top of the split SDK, because some of the machines that you're using to play, they may be 10-year-old, and it's quite convenient to have a flexible SDK that is lightweight and easier to implement in those devices. So what's next? Basically, one thing you need to retain from this is close collaboration is really powerful. When the consumer wins, we all win, and we would like to pursue that. So if there are any industry segment in which you are working and you would like to provide inputs, we welcome them. You can put a query on our website. You don't need to be a member, and we will look at it. And see how we can basically further improve our specification to take care of those specific industry segment requirements. We're also pursuing the work with some of the additional mediums used by the consumers to make their purchases. And also, if you want to be more active, there are different models in which you can contribute to EMVCo. And again, all the specifications are royalty-free, available on our website. And there's a lot of information available on 3DS. We have the best practices document on top of all the white papers that we wrote together. I welcome you to go on YouTube. There's been 2 webinars with W3C, FIDO, and EMVCo that explains, the first one explains a little bit more into detail how the 3 technologies work together. And the second one, which is from 2 weeks ago, is more of a Q&A session that addresses additional questions that we received from the market. And a lot of quick resource documents are available on there. Strong customer authentication is something that everyone knows about in Europe because it's a regulatory requirement. But we thought that having a testimonial from the US Payment Forum is something really powerful as well, in the sense where they found that the 3DS protocol has significantly reduced fraud as well as improved the approval rate. So there is a business benefit in it. And even if it's not a regulatory requirement, people are adopting it because it actually helps their business and the bottom line. On that note, I would like to thank you for sticking with us just before the drinks. I know the cocktails are calling. But here are some links where you can find more information and interact with us. If you have some questions that come later on, we welcome them as well. On that note, I'm spot on time.
Thank you. Did anyone have any questions?
Everyone's thirsty.
Thank you so much. Please help me think.
Thank you.